4, 3, 2, 1. KenCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to a special Friday KenCast. It is John Wick Chapter 4 day. This is the release date of John Wick Chapter 4, and I have gone to see it with my special guest today who's going to talk to me about this movie, Dave Srock. Filmmaker Dave Srock, how are you?
I'm doing great now that I'm here with you on the KenCast.
That's great. It's wonderful that you're here. And just to tell everyone, this is something really new. This is something we haven't done before. You and I just went to see this movie in Burbank. It is opening day. We were probably one of the first showings of the day. And we did this together because we wanted to experience the movie. We were excited to see it. And we wanted to share with the world our first impressions, our honest first impressions of the movie. How are you doing? Has this been an exciting day for you?
It's been an exciting day. I think anytime there's a new John Wick movie out, it's going to be an exciting day. And I'm perfectly fine with dedicating my whole day to that. I don't need to think about anything else other than John Wick on a John Wick day. So
that's great. And it's great to see everyone who's joined us today. Sebastian, it's great to see you. Dylan Hall, hello, Ken. Hi. AEH, wonderful to see you. Kate Maloney, channel member, thank you. Glad that you're here as well. Marianella says, hey, Ken. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
Dylan Hall says, you went to see it in Burbank, the same place Tori mentioned in Cobra Kai at the playground with Miguel. Indeed. Dave and I live in and around the Valley in California. So we are right there. And the AMC Burbank, that tends to be a movie theater that's featured a lot in lots of different videos and shows. Isn't that right, Dave? It's kind of a famous movie theater.
I see it a lot on like even pop culture entertainment websites doing their little press before any big major release. So it's always fun to be involved with the theater that you see on TV often.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Dave, let's just jump right into this because I know everyone wants to talk about this. The first thing I will say right now, and I'll put up the sticker, is that right now we are not talking spoilers. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen, stay with us right now. We will warn you when we're transitioning to spoiler discussion because, Dave, we could talk a lot about spoilers, can't we?
There's a lot of spoilers. There's a lot of spoilers. It's a 3-hour movie, so I mean, there's a lot to discuss.
Yes, indeed. So you're a big fan, Dave. How did this movie, just straight out of the theater, we just got back, how do you feel?
I feel very satisfied. You know, every John Wick movie up to this point has kind of left me saying like, wow, that was really great. I can't believe that they still knocked it out of the park and made it better than even the previous one. And again, I feel the same thing. They delivered once again, 4 for 4. So
yeah, it was really good. I think a lot of people, I think by this time, if you're at John Wick 4 and you haven't seen John Wick yet, you know, I don't think there are any like surprise, like this is definitely still a John Wick movie. And if you've seen the first 3 and you don't like them for whatever reason, I don't know if the 4th part is going to make you like it all of a sudden. But on the other hand, like so many people, I think if you love John Wick, if you really enjoyed those movies, this one continues that. Like there is not a drop off in quality. Would you say that's fair?
absolutely. Definitely didn't dip at all.
Yes. So just looking at this from these 4 movies, how do you think this one compares to the first 3? What's your first impression?
Boy, well, my first impression is definitely the biggest one. It's definitely up the scale, up the scope and size, which is impressive considering where they've been already. But I don't know if I could say it's better or worse than any of the other 3 because they kind of all seem to have their merits of being amazing in their own way. But geez, I mean, compared to the other 3, I say it just fits in perfectly.
Yeah, it does. I think for me personally, I'll always like the first one the best just because, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I just heard it was a good movie and I just watched it and it was like absolutely amazing. And I think that's just a very unique experience. It was very fresh at the time, but parts 2 and 3 were really good too. And it They held up the quality. The same creative team was behind it. It really felt like just, sometimes you have sequels that have a different tone. These felt like they were completely locked in step, a true series. And then this one, my goodness, yeah, you're right. It's like, it's longer, it's more epic, and I don't know. It's tough for me. I think I still like all the sequels about the same, which very good. I think they're all very good. What was your favorite thing about this generally, compared to maybe the other John Wick movies? Was there something special, some special quality about this that you liked the best?
Boy, I think, something that was a little different about this one that maybe I liked that some people might not, but I think because of the runtime being longer, I enjoyed the pacing of it. I felt like when we were in action sequences, they would go for definitely a sustained period of time as they have in the previous movies. But when we were off of them and we were just listening to characters talk, it feels like they choose their words very carefully. Like we're really moving along at a nice pace. And even when we stop, we're getting just the amount of information we need to continue on. Nobody's dragging it down ever. So it really, in my opinion, like pacing wise, this one stood out as being impressive to sustain that length of a film.
Yes, indeed. And it's funny because we saw Avatar: Way of the Water earlier this week. We hadn't seen it yet. We missed it. And that one was, for me, that one had kind of, it felt long. Like it felt like time could have been cut out of that, for pacing, whatever reasons. We could probably have a whole other discussion on Avatar, but this was different. I think it did a very good job. I think for me, it's possible. Like, I thought maybe 2/3 the way through, the momentum kind of went down a little bit, but it's one of those things where I don't know, that it's like it picks back up again. And I don't know if you've had that experience before with the other John Wick movies where you think, oh, there's a scene where, yeah, maybe it kind of dips for a bit, but then it just comes right back and you really can't remember, that part that
Yeah.
you thought dipped. I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I feel like, maybe in some of the other movies you have like a set piece where it's not like clicking with you, but it's something that they do that's so impressive that like even if it doesn't work for you, they're going to throw something else at you in the next like 4 minutes to make you completely forget about whatever you weren't engaged with. So I feel like in the previous movies, maybe only in John Wick 3 did I feel like at one point I was getting like fatigued with it, but then the ending just like crushed it out of the park in John Wick 3. And then this one, again, they do that thing where they're just kind of picking right up where they left off. And you can't believe the continuity working so well, actually.
I know. I hadn't seen the third one since it came out, and I just realized, like, as we were starting to watch the movie, I was like, "Oh man, I probably should have seen a refresher," because it picks up right like that specifically from the third one. So, if you're going to watch John Wick 4, I would recommend, maybe like on YouTube they have like what just happened with John Wick, if you don't want to watch those movies. Because yeah, I mean, it really picks up right at the end of John Wick 3, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's the same how 2 went into 3 that way. And I think it's kind of fun that they don't really mess around. They're just like, let's just get to it. Let's just keep it going.
Right. And hello to everyone in the comments. Chris Klotz, great to see you, Chris Klotz. Drew Rohalley from the Last Row podcast says, John Wick is one of my favorite action series of all time. Each one seems to get better. Amazing, talented filmmakers. Keanu is the best. And he goes on, my personal ranking is 1, 3, 2. Haven't seen 4 yet, but it's so tough to rank. And then he says, the simplicity and the originality of the first one is what really keeps me coming back. The fact you didn't know much about Wick at that point or the world around him added to his mystique. And I will say about this one, if you enjoy that world, like they keep developing it. Like this world, you learn so much more about, the table, all of the mythology, the canon surrounding John Wick and his life. I don't know, how did you think that compared as far as like the background and learning more about him?
I enjoyed it just because I feel like even in the previous movies, they kind of have a tongue-in-cheek way of going about it. Like they kind of know like the rules, and it's very proper, and we're gonna do things these certain ways. And in this movie, again, they're introducing you new things of, well, this is how this works because of the system of, the Continental and all the high table and all that stuff. So it's kind of, I think, refreshing to go from that simplicity to the first one and get so big by now and not feel overwhelmed and not feel like, oh, they just got so stupid and silly with it, and just feel like it's a nice continuation.
It is. And Marianella says, a neighbor went to see the movie and told me it's epic. And so, Dave, as a filmmaker, you're a student of all kinds of films. You enjoy them, you make them. What ways really stuck out to you about Chapter 4 that made it seem very epic?
One thing for me was maybe, and every movie has a opening action set piece, so I'm not going to say what it is in this movie, but I felt like in this movie, the opening set piece was massive, and it kind of right off the bat set the standard for what the rest of the movie was going to be like. We're not just giving you like a quick little thing. Like this is a really big intro, and it's going to take up a huge chunk of the movie. And I was on board for like all of that.
Yeah, and you know what struck me, especially watching this movie, its epic stature and just the production design. The world feels bigger, like the shots seem wider somehow. And we'll get into the specifics of the production design, but to me, it really felt like old-fashioned musicals. And again, don't take me the wrong way, but the idea that, those old epic big musicals where everyone would break into song and like dance. Oh, this is like that, only it's like obviously super modern, stylized, and instead of singing and dancing, you have like these insanely choreographed fights. It's almost like a musical. It's like, oh, we're on to the next big production number. It's like a massive choreographed fight where you could tell that they had so much care. They spent so much time specifically planning out everything about these fights. And it looked like dancing to me.
It's always dancing, and the locations they pick for the dancing is always very significant too, because that's going to play into maybe what gets used to keep the dancing going, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Hey guys, Terry Johnson, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. By the way, got my Save Silver merchandise, wore the shirt, and had some people staring at me today, oddly. Thank you so much, Terry. And guys, if you have your Save Silver merchandise, take a picture, upload it to social media, tag us. Love to see you wearing the Save Silver merchandise that is available right now. Dylan Hall says, Avatar bored me. Waiting years for part 2, and it was trash. It's interesting. Yeah, we've talked to people, I think, Dave, on all ends of the spectrum about this Avatar 2, and I'm kind of in the middle on it. It was okay for me, and I think you liked it maybe a little more. It has a lot of good qualities.
It has good qualities, but it has the same quality for me as the first one. Whereas, I mean, I saw it this week, and I honestly don't remember a whole lot of it. So,
right, it's right. That's kind of a side effect of Avatar. Lupo Music says, hey, Ken, didn't see John Wick 4 yet, but came to say hi to you guys. Thank you, Lupo Music. Really appreciate it. So let's talk about John Wick 4. The character of John Wick, Keanu Reeves. How did he strike you this time? The character and also Keanu Reeves's performance.
What I liked about this one, that I wouldn't say we lost it in parts 2 and 3, but maybe a little more like part 1. I would say he was a little more emotional, like in this one. In part 1, there's a lot of his wife passing, and we see a lot of that stuff. 2 and 3 really don't take a whole lot of breaks. They really go pretty white knuckle the whole movie. But this one, there was a couple more moments where I think I was feeling for John Wick. I was like, hey, this guy's had some tough goes. So I appreciated the extra level of a heavy-hearted John Wick.
Indeed. And I think you made a comment to me that he has almost no lines,
Yeah.
except he has one of the best lines in the movie, or the best line in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, and we can talk about what that line is once we get to the spoiler discussion. But yes, follow up on your thought there.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think there is a line that they give John Wick in this movie that it just is like, that's a really good line for John Wick to say, and I just love that, and I love that in this moment of the movie that's what he said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this movie, I think, like the other movies, one of the reasons I love the John Wick movies, it's not just because of the fight scenes and the action choreography, which we'll get into, especially in the spoiler discussion. We'll get into like some specifics on that. But these movies somehow just attract such great actors. Like the casting is so good in these movies. And this type of movie doesn't necessarily always go for the best actors that they can get, but for whatever reason, the casting is so perfect. And this movie is no different. And off the top of your head, Dave, who sticks out to you as like an amazing addition to the cast?
It was Donnie Yen stole the show for me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that this is, in my opinion, this is maybe the best opponent John Wick has had for all the movies. Not just because of Donnie Yen being an amazing martial arts performer, but I think what they did with the character that he's playing, who he is, what his story is kind of the best matchup for John Wick to date.
Yeah, he was. And there's something about Donnie Yen when he's on screen. It's just, there's something about his presence that just, I don't know, makes you feel like, I don't know, you're at home, you feel comfortable, but you know some great stuff is going to happen. And I don't know how much, I guess we'll wait to the spoilers to talk about like his character Kane, but it's like he's able to do so much where the character has a very significant limitation, which just makes him much more badass.
Oh, absolutely. And they gave him a lot more depth than the average villain is going to get too. So, and they set up a lot of his backstory very efficiently too. Like, it's not something where you go take a huge side tangent of the movie and go learn about him. It's kind of all introduced to you piece by piece throughout the movie. So something about the 3-hour runtime just doesn't bother me at all with this movie. They just absolutely kept it going.
Yeah. And really keys into that personal aspect. These characters, epic fight scenes, but there's this personal connection between all these characters that I think is often overlooked, but just makes it so strong, makes this character of Kane so strong. Who else? Okay, so we've got Bill Skarsgård plays the Marquis. Is that, oh gosh, is that how you pronounce? I'm sorry, we're like right out of this movie, and I'm trying to remember everyone's names. But Bill Skarsgård, he plays the Marquis, I think, and who is all powerful now. How did his performance strike you?
I really enjoyed him. You know, I think like I said to you before the movie started, like, wow, he's really having a good couple of years right now, and it was kind of fun to just throw him in the mix because it's always fun when there's like an up and coming actor. I mean, he's been coming up for a minute now, but you know, like somebody who's really on the rise right now, to throw them in the middle of an already established franchise and have them do really well. So I definitely enjoyed him.
Yeah, he was fantastic. We've got, I'll throw out some other names. Rina Sawayama, she plays, is it Akira? Yes, Akira, who is the daughter of, and I'm trying to get his name. What is his name?
This is Hiroyuki Sanada.
Yes, Shimazu. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Just talk about those characters in that situation for a second.
What they're doing in the film, or just what I thought of how they kind of were?
I guess your impressions of what you thought of them, and then maybe vaguely what they're doing.
Well, I guess without spoiler, huge spoiler, I'll say that they're working at another hotel, and that's about all you need to know. And their involvement in the plot is such a great way to just up the stakes of the whole movie as soon as their plot line comes in. Like right away, you kind of get where they're going with it in the story and how it's going to end up expanding, way beyond even the high table.
Right. Yeah, it's really epic. I love the Akira character. She goes through like a number of phases in this movie, and I just love her arc. Wonderful presence, and I think you could probably do a whole movie based on that character. I mean, I think she was absolutely fantastic. And Ian McShane is back. Lance Reddick, we do see Lance Reddick, which that was bittersweet, and the movie was dedicated to him, right?
Yeah, at the end credits, they had a nice little dedication to him. So it was kind of sad to see him for the last time in a film, but it was also just kind of nice to be seeing him, knowing that he had recently passed away.
Right. What was your favorite thing if you were to talk about the set pieces in this movie? What was your favorite aspect of the set pieces? Did you feel like they were bigger? Did you feel that they were longer? Do you feel like they were more precise?
They've had some pretty long action sequences before. I'm thinking back to part 2 specifically when, I don't know how far into the movie it is, but there's a moment where everybody's game to go after John Wick, basically. And it's kind of the first time in the John Wick world we just saw everybody coming at him, like from left and right. And he's on a subway and he's over here, and they're kind of do this crazy montage. And I think like in this movie, they do a lot of that, but they're aware when they're doing that and that they always have to do something above that so that you don't feel bored with, oh, we're just seeing a bunch of people come at John Wick again. Like there's always either a little twist to each action set piece or something to make you laugh almost even.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's where I felt like sometimes if I felt the momentum dragging, or if I felt like I was seeing a scene like, oh, we've seen this before. And then you give it just like a minute and it's like, oh, okay. It's like a misdirection. Like
right.
They want to make you think it's going a certain direction. Then it's totally new. Everyone, thank you for your comments. John Wick and the new trilogy of Planet of the Apes were the best action trilogy of last decade. Yes, this movie will definitely add to that. Dylan asks, John Wick versus Cobra Kai, what is better to watch? I don't know. Like, gosh, I guess this is sort of like a comic book R-rated hyper action version. Just not wall to wall, but the action in this is really intense. Like it's probably the most intense fighting, I don't know, that I've seen in a movie. I mean, in such a huge movie.
And the thing about 2 is they do amazing fighting, but the production value is incredible. And I think maybe that's something that I would give John Wick the edge over. They have a bigger budget and maybe more time to set all their pieces on the board. But as we were saying before, some of the sets and just landscapes are unbelievable.
Yeah, they really are. Even from like the opening, it was funny because there's a moment when, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. Lawrence Fishburne's character does a transition that is right out of Lawrence of Arabia. It's like the same transition. And I laughed to myself. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, something that they kind of lived up to the promise of that transition. It was a very sort of epic sequence that followed after that. And so, yeah, you're right. Production value, just the visualization was absolutely amazing. We will be getting into that in the spoiler section. Everyone, thank you for your comments. We have Sonny Srock saying, hi, Dave.
The best person in the world.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you for joining us, Sonny.
My lovely, amazing wife.
Thank you, Sonny. Thanks for joining us. Dave was amazing to watch us with today. It's always great to bounce ideas off someone who's so invested in film, so knowledgeable, and so passionate about it. So It's All Right says, I can't wait to go with my hubby in a couple weeks. Been watching the other ones to get ready. That's a good idea. This one picks up all those details from the previous ones. Let me see. Terry says, is John Wick already out in theaters? Yes, we just saw it. So you can go out and watch it this weekend. No spoilers here for the next few minutes. I think maybe in about 5 minutes we'll transition over to spoilers, just because it's tough to not talk about it. Matt Moore says, hey, I'm not saying as I haven't seen the movie, but howdy, Ken. Look forward to seeing it. Pew pew. Have a great weekend. Yeah, there's a lot of pew pew in that movie. That's for sure. Jaws says, Keanu Reeves always good action movies. I remember Matrix, but even Point Break is amazing. Yes, I have a lot of affection for Point Break myself.
Speed.
Are you Speed? Yes. What's your favorite pre-Matrix Keanu Reeves movie?
Oh, it would be Speed, actually. I when I was young, Speed was a big rewatch for me. Not just because of Keanu, though, because Dennis Hopper was one of my favorite all-time villains in that.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and what an end for that villain too. My goodness, yeah, that was a good that was a great movie.
Lost his head.
Yeah, he lost his head over everything. My goodness. And I've been seeing comments. I know we have a lot of viewers who are Cobra Kai fans. We're going to focus on John Wick today. Maybe at the end we'll talk a little bit about Cobra Kai if you guys want to. But so what else stood out to you? I know coming out of the theater you were going nuts over the camera work. What about the camera work really stuck out to you as a cameraman yourself?
Well, I think we went through a whole phase in movies where everybody complained that there was too much editing, too much shaky camera, and we've gotten pretty far away from that now. So it's nice to see directors come in and say, I'm going to give you this crazy fight scene, but it's going to actually look really beautiful, and you're going to be able to completely follow every little move that's happening, no matter how much we throw at you. And this movie specifically had a couple of camera tricks, just a different way to look at an action scene, and that really wowed me, actually.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it because I feel like I'll kind of blow that scene if I say how they filmed it.
Right. I know we are just about to get into spoilers, and I think you're gonna. If you want to join us in the spoiler discussion, or if you're watching on the replay and you're ready to talk about spoilers, we will just jump into it and talk about our thoughts, and we won't be inhibited as far as that goes. But I guess to wrap up the non-spoiler part of this, Dave, what would be your overall summary to someone who's thinking about going to see this? Maybe they're on the fence, maybe they haven't seen a John Wick movie yet. What would be your message to them?
Well, if you haven't seen any of them yet, you should go watch 1, 2, and 3, and then go see this, because I think you're going to be a little lost. But if you're on the fence because you maybe thought 3 wasn't as good as 1 and 2, I would say absolutely come back. And if you love 1, 2, and 3 already, then you have to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I echo Dave. I really enjoyed this movie. I think if you are a fan of John Wick's 1, 2, and 3, you're going to love John Wick 4. It's got more of everything that you already love. It's got new characters that you haven't seen before. And, touching moments with returning characters and returning threads, so I definitely 100% recommend it. I understand the reviews are good right now. They're very good for it. But if anyone kind of tells you it's bad or it's crap or whatever, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily believe them. I say definitely go check it out for yourself.
Yep. And one thing maybe I'll tease for if there's somebody who doesn't want to get spoiled, but one thing they add in all the John Wick movies is great tools or weapons for John Wick to fight with. And this movie had a fight scene with a particular weapon that is very famous weapon.
Yeah, right.
And to watch him use it and what they did with it was very fun. Like, I had a big smile on my face through this whole sequence of a particularly famous weapon that's been used in famous movies, but also maybe a famous kids TV show as well.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And guys, if you want to hang around for approximately another 30 seconds, we'll transition into the spoiler section, and maybe we'll just start spoiling it by talking about that right away. So everyone, if you haven't seen it yet and you want to avoid spoilers, go ahead and watch this again. Come up to this moment. This is about 30 minutes in. Watch on the replay, and we'll start talking spoilers, and we can virtually talk with you then. Everyone else, if you're wanting spoilers, now's the time. We're gonna get into spoilers. I'm gonna throw this banner up. We are talking spoilers right now. So this is John Wick Chapter 4. Dave, you just talked about an epic action sequence where we see a type of weapon that is popular, and we get to see a lot of use of it. Tell us all about that, because we can now.
Well, there's a pretty significant nunchuck sequence with John Wick that I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't believe we've seen him really go to town with some nunchucks yet, and it just felt like a great homage to Bruce Lee, or it's just such a classic weapon that I feel like every time people see, they kind of have a laugh about, either because of Ninja Turtles or Bruce Lee or something. But not only did he use it, he used it well.
He did. And that was the thing I was very struck by with the nunchucks fight, was I was just in awe of it. And I was going, wow, so this is what you can do with nunchucks. They're quite deadly, weren't they?
You've always thought, it must really hurt. But then when you see this, you go, oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that's going to take some people down.
Yeah, indeed. And when I was young, I studied martial arts, and, they let you practice with like the foam nunchucks, because it was illegal to sell hard nunchucks.
Right.
And, but all they would, or at least for me, all they would teach would be like forms, where you're just doing it yourself, you're swinging them around, which is fun, but they really don't teach you how to fight with them, or at least the kids, where I was, they didn't teach. So it's really fun to see the true weapon potential of nunchucks.
It was great too, because he would do a little bit of pistol work in between, and then he would just kind of dangle them over his shoulder or neck. So it would kind of almost tell you while you're watching it too, like, we're not done with these yet. These are still going to keep getting used for another couple minutes.
Yes, 100%. And then, well, let's take that as an opportunity to talk about all these set pieces. I mean, this is part of the first major set piece of this movie. There's one in the desert, that's like a little appetizer, but then This is like just an incredible set piece. What really stuck out to you about this entire set piece? This is the hotel, the other hotel, run by Akira's father, and I'll pull up his name while you're talking about it. But what struck you about this entire sequence?
Oh, this sequence just had me somewhere halfway through it, where I think it kind of helps rope me in for the rest of the movie, actually. One, because it was so long, I started to think to myself while it was happening, this is like the end sequence of John Wick 2 or John Wick 3. Like, we're getting the size of the finale for the beginning of this movie. And even some of the plot points they were doing felt like they were end of the movie kind of things. But you knew that we still had so much more to go after that kept me so intrigued, just of like, wow, we are setting up a lot and getting through a lot right now. Like, we're just getting to it. We're not going to drag it out. And where it's going to go from here, I don't know, because like I said, it felt almost like the ending. Like if it was a lesser written movie, that was the ending.
Yeah. I 100% agree. It was, my jaw dropped, I think, when I realized just how long this was going on, and it wasn't ending. It just kept on going. And, we can kind of talk about production design too, but this entire sequence and the lead up to the sequence, I just absolutely loved the production design. There's a lot of like European influence and Asian influence. And in this scene, the choreography, but the choreography in the settings and just the vibe of the setting. Each place has its own unique feel. You feel like you're in a unique setting that's almost specifically designed for this fight, which it was. And, as a filmmaker and editor, I kept watching these scenes in amazement, because in the background, they would incorporate on-set lights that would like pulse and I'm like, is that in like an editing nightmare? Because they'd have to like cut where, it's not mid pulse, and I just can't imagine how tricky that was. Maybe everything was choreographed. I don't know. Did you think that at all?
The strobing lights for me just felt like they've had those in all of the previous John Wick movies, like the constant just rooms where like crazy lights are doing random things. So it's almost like when they walk into a room now, it feels like they're just like, yeah, we're doing this. This is what we do. This is how this is how we build these sets, and this is how we make this movie and world look. So it honestly just makes me smile because they don't shy away at all from what they're trying to do or give you ever.
Yeah, the G&E team are having a lot of fun in this movie, that's for sure. And so we have this entire sequence really in this hotel, and it really sets up these personal stakes that John Wick has put all his friends in danger. The movie basically opens with the Continental being blasted to the ground. We have Lance Reddick's character gets killed right off the bat. John Wick has really caused trouble for everyone. And that character of Akira, I think she's younger, but she seems to be the only one that vocalizes directly to John Wick how much danger he's put everyone in, and she's not happy about that. And he gets people killed, including her father, which is a major plot thread that we don't get back to till the end. But really, can you talk about like the personal stakes and even Donnie Yen's character?
Yeah, so one of the things I loved about the introduction of Donnie Yen and her father's character was that they established that they knew John Wick and that they respected him. And it wasn't just, oh, I respect this guy, so I can't wait to kill him, like the previous movies, where like, oh, it's going to be an honor to kill the great John Wick. These guys were actually like, I don't want to kill John Wick. I've always loved John Wick. He was a brother to me. So I'm going to actually either go against the high table or I'm going to stay with them and make a decision based on whatever keeps me or my family alive. And that's it. So it felt like the stakes were way higher because they actually loved him and respected him, even though they kind of had to either fight with him or against him.
Yeah. And that's one thing I really love about this movie and the John Wick movies is that this is kind of obviously a society that most of us hopefully don't live in or anything like this, but
we're living in it. We're living in it.
We're not allowed to talk about that openly, but these characters are put in a point of dilemma where they're almost forced to do these things. There's no easy way out. And that's kind of the fun of the movie is figuring out the puzzle. Like, how are these characters? Are they going to be able to get out of this? Are they going to be able to, break free of the threats against themselves and their family and do what they would want to do? And I don't know. I think that's really an interesting aspect of the John Wick movies.
Yeah. And I also am just kind of a sucker anytime there's like a big showdown that's going to happen and the two rivalries are basically saying like, I don't want to do this, but we got to do it. So we're doing it.
Right.
It just feels like a classic trope that always adds a little extra level of seriousness to it.
So if you're a fan of martial arts movies, how would you say this movie stacks up to just action movies or martial arts movies in general?
I mean, I'm sitting there today watching it, and part of me says like, this is just a masterclass in how to do an action movie. Like, I honestly, I could throw this question out to you right now. Is this the best action series of all time? Like, each movie is incredible. I know it's early to say, like, and there's still more I know there's going to be a TV show and stuff. So there's still more, we're going to blow up this world more, I'm sure. But is this the best action series of all time? I'm serious. Like every other action series has a movie that's kind of a clunker, probably. I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of that is all good across the board, but these are all phenomenal across the board.
Right. That's a wonderful question, and I think it very well could be the greatest action series of all time for a few reasons. The first is not just the action sequences, just
Yeah.
just the action itself, which is fantastic. But then you add to that the production design and the level of choreography and thought put into the space of the production design and the way the fights interact with the sets, the theme, the production, how they look, how the lighting lights the action sequences. That's just a level of coordination that I don't think we see normally. And then on top of that, the characters. I mean, the characters aren't necessarily the deepest characters you find in any movie, but they're exactly what they should be for this movie, and they're played by such great actors.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. To me, it's like the quality of the acting, the quality of the look, the cinematography, the
Yeah.
production design, and the choreography working all together. Has there been another movie series that has all those?
I don't think that, or if they do, they have at least one movie where you go, well, the story was kind of whatever in that one.
Right.
So that's why I'm starting to ask that. Actually, can we, this one comment that just came up here from It's All Right
It's all
about,
right. The one here we go.
yeah, actually,
No,
so I want to only address that because the Parabellum knife fight is my favorite John Wick fight of all the John Wick movies, at least before going into this one.
ooh,
But I'll say you're gonna get plenty of knife action still. The nunchucks are only a brief part. So, but I
right.
agree that Parabellum knife fight is probably, that was the standout fight for me until this movie.
Right. And everything's a weapon in this movie. I mean, there's that sequence where cars are weapons. I
Right.
mean, when he's like running through, I don't know if, excuse me, I haven't been to Paris. If it's the Arc de Triomphe or something, it's like right around there, and everyone's coming. This is, I think, the scene you were talking about before. Everyone's coming after John Wick. He's trying to get to the duel that he needs to get to in order to get freedom, and all the assassins are coming after him, and they're coming after him with cars. There's normal traffic, but there are assassins using cars, and everyone's getting hit and trying to dodge cars. I mean, it's sort of the same way. It's like a car fight.
It's basically let's have a massive fight in the middle of a fast moving traffic jam and see what happens to all the bodies.
Indeed. And the first thing I think about that scene as well is we have a new character called Nobody, or he calls himself Nobody, and he has a very influential dog, or at least the dog's very influential in these fights. And can you talk a little bit about that character and his dog compatriot?
Yeah, that was a character that I actually really enjoyed all the way through the movie. He was basically another random assassin who was trying to scoop the money up for knocking off John Wick, which has been going on for a lot of the other movies already. But instead of just kind of making him some random other villain to come in, they gave him some nice depth and what he was doing and what games he was trying to play within the world. I thought made his character really stand out as just not a throwaway villain. Like, it was like, oh, this is a good little extra side boss almost for John to deal with. But the fact that he had a dog, I really enjoyed that because dogs have been a part of this whole series. And now it was like, hey, why don't we give one of the villains a dog finally and have him go to town with that?
Right. I know. And, like you said, the dog component, I was so distracted by, of course, everything happening in the movie and the way he was using the dog in these fights and how good the dog was. And he had like a special command for the dog, like nuts, for the dog to go for people's nuts. That towards the end of the movie, when you hit that crucial scene where John Wick decides to shoot the guy who's about to shoot the dog, and you go, oh, how brilliant that is. Like, oh, yes, he cares so much about the dogs, of course. And I don't know, is it weird to say I didn't think of that coming because I was so preoccupied with the movie, but I thought it was kind of nice.
Right. It's almost like the way the script is reminding you, like, we've always loved dogs in these movies. If you forgot, like, don't forget this started because of John Wick's dog.
Right. Yes. Well, okay, so let's talk about, a hero is only as good as his villains, and we know that nobody was an antagonist, but maybe not totally bad, obviously, by the end of the movie. Everyone's just out to make money, right? Except we've got the Marquis, played by Bill Skarsgård, right? And as you were talking, I mean, he's had quite a flourishing career lately. He played It, among other roles, very memorably. What did you think of his character as a villain here, of the fourth movie? So this is the new villain, and then also his performance as this character.
I thought he was great. I thought he did a nice job as the I want to say more sleazy, but the more elegant villain who's maybe sitting behind a desk more than some of the others. But I mean, I felt like just him and Donnie Yen, every scene they were in, both of them were just trying to chew up the scenery as much as they could, and they were pulling it off. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I know it was an interesting choice of a villain this time because he was younger, and he was kind of weak. He wasn't. He might have had some skills, but he always depended upon his goons to cause mayhem. And at least to me, I always thought of him as like inferior to John Wick and the heroes. He didn't. The only thing he had was status and a love for like aristocracy, and he had all that too. But yeah, I thought the movie did a good job of, even though he was kind of personally a weak character, he threw his weight around very well and had control over Donnie Yen and Nobody, and all these other characters. And yeah, it was an interesting. I don't know. It was an interesting choice, interesting character, I thought.
It was good to have somebody sit at the top of the other. There's basically 4 or 5 villains, I guess, now that I'm thinking back on it. There was definitely multiple bad guys who showed up, and you'd be like, oh, here they are again. Let's go. So I think putting him at the top was a nice choice.
Yeah, indeed. And Rick Sanchez says, great movie. Keanu Reeves is a beast. I totally agree, 100%. And of course, we were talking about the Marquis, the new villain who is in Paris. And so, what do you think of these settings this time? We're going to new locations. What's your impression of these settings?
Well, I love the Japan setting in the opening. I thought that was just really cool. But the European settings were like kind of amazing, just to even just see where they were filming them. It made you wonder every time, like, where is this? And maybe something too that we can say has been in all the other movies is a nightclub sequence, and this movie certainly has a nightclub sequence. And gosh, when they entered that nightclub, the way it looked, it was just like, whoa. Like, I can't. Is this a set? Is this a real place? Like, you're almost wondering just what went in to get the cameras in there, practically.
Right. And that was, in that sequence in particular, that was fascinating for me because it was this little sort of side story where John Wick has to get the family crest in order to challenge the Marquis to a duel. But in order to do that, he has to kill, this guy who killed a member of his family, and he's big into poker. And that was such an interesting character and an interesting sequence. Honestly, the character reminded me of Colin Farrell as the Penguin. It's kind of like that kind of fat suit, same kind of attitude. He had golden teeth. How did that hit you? That section of the movie?
That was the section that, if there was going to be something that pulled me out of it or didn't work, it would have been that, but it wasn't. I loved that sequence because they actually threw a couple surprises at you. You know, you thought it was just going to be John Wick going off on some kind of side quest to kill a guy to do the thing, you know, A to B. But they ended up bringing in all the villains into that sequence and have them all sit next to each other for a moment of tension, which was a lot of fun. And then you kind of started introducing the idea of they're not going to kill each other right away because they have things that they have to accomplish. They can't just off each other. They have to, there's all the rules with the high table and what Donnie Yen's trying to accomplish and what John Wick is trying to accomplish. So you're watching it all unfold, but you're aware of the rules that are happening within the world. And it's not mindless. You're fully engaged with it.
Yes. And I think what shocked me about that sequence was you knew it was going to end with some sort of fight. Like that tension was building up. You didn't quite know how it was going to go, but we get into that dance sequence. We get into this amazing, I guess you could say it's a dance club with like water coming down and light coming through the water. And this guy who's the bad guy, and I can't remember his name offhand. Maybe someone in the comments you can write, but he's this big guy, like in the fat suit, but then he just starts wailing on John Wick and he's like athletic. And it's almost just fascinating to watch that, you know, it's like a heightened reality kind of thing. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
That kind of reminded me a little bit of if you ever saw Dragon, the Bruce Lee story from back in the 90s, how all the fights in that movie were kind of like a fake heightened reality where they almost looked like cartoon characters a little bit. And that's how this character felt. And when that guy started fighting, it was such a surprise of how acrobatic he could be that it had me cracking up throughout that whole fight. Like it's amazing how you can watch so many fights, but enjoy them all for different reasons, actually.
Yeah, indeed. And I always love the inclusion of poker. That's an interesting game that I think kind of really fits that scene very well. The tension of who's going to win, who has what hand, you know, how would these assassins play the game of poker? You know, that I thought was very interesting. And so I'm trying to think, there's so much about this movie. Another action sequence, which was pretty funny, I know that you mentioned it too, and I thought was that basically we had the longest staircase tumble, I think, in film history.
It's possible. I mean, they set up the sequence with, they say how many steps he has to go up. I can't remember how many it was. And it takes him a long time to get up those steps and a short time to go back down. But the fact that they did it all in basically one take, I was actually wondering, how did they pull it off? Was there a stitch? Like, was it two shots cut together ever? Or was that just all one person rolling down a hill? It was pretty impressive.
That was impressive. And I would be so intrigued to see how they did that, because basically you had that camera just tracking Keanu Reeves as he was just going down the stairs, all these flights of stairs. And it almost, you know, made me laugh by the end because I couldn't believe how far he had gone. And of course he keeps going. And, you know, I would love to see the behind the scenes of this movie. Okay, so another big topic we should probably talk about is the fact that John Wick dies.
This happens. Apparently.
So what did you think? How did that hit you? Do you believe it? All of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wasn't expecting it because I wasn't sure if this was the last movie going into it. Even I purposely hadn't read anything about it, or I didn't even watch the trailer on purpose because I really get upset that trailers spoil the whole movie. So I just don't participate in them if I know I'm going to see the movie anyway. But him passing, I think for me, I started to be okay with it, actually, at the point of where what I thought was the best John Wick line, where they were talking about if something was going to be on your tombstone, what would you want written on it? And they were talking about what had gone on Lance Reddick's. and just keeping it, how do you say something about someone in so few words? They were basically discussing it's a very hard decision to make. And before John Wick left the scene, he said, I would want mine to say loving husband. And when he said that, I was like, damn, that is a really smart line, actually. And it's actually pretty touching coming from John Wick. I really respected that. So when they did that after he passed away, I guess to me, it just kind of all fit. So if he doesn't come back, I'm actually okay with where they left it. I'm also not sure where the story goes after this. It did feel like there was kind of a period put on the John Wick series a little bit, whereas 2 and 3 did not end that way. 2 and 3 ended with like, get ready because there's more coming.
Right. I know it was I was really mixed on that at the end, because I agree that line was really touching, where we heard from John Wick, and it's like the way he said it was, and he said it a couple times to make sure everyone knew, like, I want mine to say loving husband, and that idea of like what I want as John Wick, it's really kind of revealing of his character. I don't know. It's a vulnerable moment. I agree. It was really touching. And then I was like, oh, that he's going to die, which was too bad. I agree, though. It's almost like, if you think about the series, could he ever catch a break? I mean, was he ever going to be able to get out of things? I guess he technically did, but maybe this was a kind of piece for him. But I mean, we can get to, there is a post-credit scene that we'll talk about, but do you think John Wick is really dead?
Boy, that's a tough question, because I don't know if they have something like up their sleeve that they're setting up, but I feel like from the movie I watched, he is. Like, it felt like they were trying to say it without even hinting towards anything else.
Right.
And if that happened to be his official death scene, I thought it was done fairly well, actually. And I think there was something to, we'd have to see it again, but partially of him passing had something to do with him helping save Donnie Yen's daughter as well. There was something in the deal that went down. I don't remember what the line that they said was, but they said something out loud that kind of tipped John, that they knew that they were both doing a plan. They had a plan together, if you know what I'm talking about.
Right, indeed. And of course, that was the after credit scene. We talked about how Akira, who's the character whose father died, and she was upset at John Wick for bringing this all upon their family. And she vowed that she would kill Kane, Donnie Yen's character, because Kane killed her father. Then we don't really focus on that for the rest of the movie. And then in the after credit sequence, Kane appears to be happy. He's around her daughter. He's got flowers. And then, boom, Akira shows up with a knife, and then it cuts out. So, Dave, in your history of watching movies, is this a setup for the sequel? Is this what's going to happen for the next movie, for the continuation of the story? Do you see, you talked about that deal. Do you think John Wick would come in back to the story at some point, if he's not dead, to help Kane?
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that there was a faking of the death or something so that he can make further appearances. But it does seem like they're setting up Donnie Yen to certainly continue his story, which I'm all for. I really enjoyed him. And I don't know if we've discussed, too, the fact that his name is Kane. He's blind, yes, and he fights with his cane.
Yes. Pretty amazing.
I mean, they get it. They know what they're doing. They're just like, yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yep. Right. Yeah. And we didn't even circle back to his character. You're right. And he does all this. He's blind. Apparently, he willingly gave his eyes to the table at some point, which, gosh, that sucks for him, because then the Marquis pressed him back into service. That is really, really too bad for his character. A bit of tragedy there. But yeah, I hope that John Wick is not really dead. I think it makes sense for him to fake his death, because that way, hopefully, he's off everyone's radar and he could
Yeah.
actually live in peace.
That's what makes me think it's possible he's not, just because even if the high table says you're cool now, you're free of whatever we cared about, somebody's coming for him. Somebody's mad about something. Like, there's no way he could just live quietly.
Right. Yeah. But as you said, if they decide to end it there, if Keanu Reeves has kind of decided that maybe he's done 4 really solid movies and he wants to move on, that I think that's a very fair final way for him to go out.
It was, yeah. So it's I guess we're only not sure because of the way content is today, with universes and streaming shows and all kinds of expansions. So I have heard that I believe he's going to show up in the Continental TV show, but
Wow.
I think that's a prequel. I think I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious about this Continental TV show, because obviously the Continental was destroyed at the beginning of this movie, but they promised to rebuild it at the end. So I guess it could be a prequel. It could be a sequel. That would be fascinating to have. I'd love some scenes too. If we see John Wick again, I'd love some scenes where we could see him enjoying life a little bit too. You know, kind of, where he at least gets some peace for a while, some measure of peace. But I don't know, or maybe he's dead and he's got all the peace he needs. So looking back at this movie, Dave, we've talked about all the great qualities of this movie. Are there certain things about this movie that you thought were mixed? You're kind of like, about?
That's a good question, because I know we just saw it, but my initial reaction is it's just really solid. Like, it just did not let me down in any kind of way. So I don't know. That's something I might have to think about, or see it again to maybe pick something apart. There was just so many subtle moments that I enjoyed apart from the big action set pieces. Like, I'm thinking even the fact that Ian McShane had made it be part of the contract that they would have to rebuild the Continental and that he would have to be reinstated as the manager.
Right.
I didn't realize that Keanu Reeves didn't know he was going to do that. So when they kind of revealed that, that was the terms, and Keanu kind of looked at him like, really? Like, that's what this was more about you in the hotel. And he kind of looks at him like, yeah, what do you expect? That's what I do. I'm the hotel guy. So
Yes.
No, I don't have anything that I'm coming to mind. Is there anything for you?
I think, the only thing that's maybe mixed for me would be, I did feel like 2/3 of the way through, the momentum kind of sagged a little bit. And I think that's maybe a symptom of the movie just being like at level 11, like basically for the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
And then it kind of sags a bit. There are some moments that kind of threaten to be repetitive, but then turn out to not be repetitive. But again, it's really hard to knock it, because it's like by the time you get through those and get to the end of the movie, it all makes sense and it all recovers so nicely. And it's just I mean, I think that's it. I think that's the only thing I could say that's mixed, and I don't think it's really significant.
Yeah, and that's probably something you could have said about the previous two, at any point too, if you just weren't in the mood to watch an action movie. Maybe, like, at a certain point, it's going on 11 for 2 hours. You might drift out for a second or two, but
Right. Yes. You had talked about, you teased me with this thought that there was the sequence, like a few minutes, that you just thought was fantastic, like innovations, things you hadn't seen before. What
Right.
was that?
So there's a sequence. It's maybe 3/4 of the way through the movie, and they've introduced these guns that the villains are going to use to shoot John Wick that have like explosive fire rounds in them. Because one thing we accept in the world of John Wick is that everybody's wearing bulletproof suits, and all they got to do is throw up an arm, and they'll be all right. But during the sequence where the people have those guns, there is a moment where the camera basically lifts up from the floor on a crane and then looks straight down on this apartment complex. It's kind of similar to, there's a sequence in Minority Report, actually, the Steven Spielberg movie, where you're drifting over from room to room, just looking straight down. And the camera does not cut through that entire sequence, and you are watching John Wick light people up with these explosive fire rounds. And I couldn't figure out, were some of the people CGI, because I couldn't figure out how they were throwing the bodies around and making them explode with this fire. And it was so impressive and went for so long. And it kind of felt almost like a nod to video games in a way, a little bit. So it was just a really fun sequence that was so well done that just made me smile through that whole, whatever couple minutes they were doing that top-down shot and those explosive rounds. That had me going, holy crap.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's the sequence I had in mind too. Like there are things in this movie I think that were very, very innovative. Not only for the series, but also for action movies in general. And like you said, that kind of view's been done before, but for this type of movie and the transition from this going from like ground level fighting to like going up and above and looking straight down, like on the grid of the rooms. And you're right, John Wick becomes like a video game character, and you're watching him like take out these guys with this flaming weapon. Just so much fun. And you can tell that they really were just so creative in how they came up with these action sequences. So many action movies, like, and I know, and series, and I know you probably know this too, just rely on doing things the way they've been done forever. And they really don't put much effort or imagination into how they're going to do things. Or maybe they'll just cover things with like shaky cam and do quick cuts. And, you really don't get a sense of space. And one of the things I love about John Wick is you have an absolute sense of space, that the sense of space is crucial to the success of each of these fight scenes. And you really have a sense of the geography of where these people are and what's happening to them. And there's just such amazing tension there. And this sequence I thought really stood out too. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I thought one thing I enjoyed about it too is it is a one shot basically, but we've seen so many one shots recently in movies. I mean, 1917 that's the whole movie basically. And we've seen it. We know that they're going to stitch shots together. So it's almost like a trick that's not that exciting anymore at this point. It's almost like 1917 put it to rest at this point. Like, I mean, Birdman technically did it up before them, but maybe there was bigger stuff going on in 1917. But this one shot to me was so much cooler for an action sequence, because it's very easy to have one actor pop up from something and shoot something and then hide, and then the camera move over here and we go look at something over here. But since we were looking top down on everybody, you saw all four bad guys in the room at the same time, and you would see how John was gonna hide and get around all of them and take them all out, and nobody left the frame ever. So it made these little set pieces of just like, well, how can he get out of that? And then of course he John Wicks his way out.
Yep, indeed. Yeah. Really, really great sequences like that. I enjoyed too, going back to that first ultra long sequence, that ultra long set piece. Donnie Yen's character Kane, just how he kind of exploded late in the sequence, and he was using his cane, but he's blind, and so he's able to sort of sense where people are. And there's that moment of vulnerability where he didn't want to shoot John Wick. He didn't want to kill him, but he can't tell that John Wick's still alive. He's being quiet, and he's just there, and he's saying, "Are you dead, John?" And of course, John Wick is still alive at that point. But I don't know, just all those little personal character touches, I don't know, I think does wonders for these set pieces.
Well, it makes the characters so much more fun as opposed to just John Wick shooting mindless goons and stuff that come against him. There's another sequence right before that that I loved with Donnie Yen, where since he can't see, he sets up these little remote chimes, these little like doorbells that he places around the room so that he
Yes.
can know when people walk through stuff. And that was just something that also made me smile, where you go, oh, here's the John Wick series again, just
Right.
giving you some fun little hook to make this fight sequence more interesting.
Right. And something I loved about that too is like, he puts one on the wall, then he takes it down and he puts it lower.
Yeah.
And it's like those moments that are just like, that's like a human thing to do. Like, it's not perfect necessarily the first time. I don't know. It just brought me into the scene. It's like, oh, okay, he's making an adjustment. It's not perfect.
Yeah, and what was fun about his character, I thought too, is we've seen the blind assassin before in movies, but they're usually like untouchable. In this movie, Donnie M was blind, so it may be ridiculous that he can do what he can do, but they actually made him miss a lot, and they made his strategy sometimes for shooting people was just walking in a room and shooting all over the place. It seemed like while he was swinging his sword, so he could just get close to you.
Right. Though the one thing, you remember that poker scene that we were talking about? How did he know what cards he had?
I was wondering that myself. I wasn't sure. Could he still see like if it was really close to his face? Because he did hold them up, but
Oh, okay. Maybe so. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe someone will let us know.
maybe his
Let us know in the
intuition
comments.
is just that good.
Yeah. It's Donnie Yen. It's Kane. He can do anything.
It's Kane with his
So
Kane.
indeed, his deadly Kane. My goodness. Dave, having been a fan of all these movies, and now you finished watching John Wick Chapter 4, what is your hope going forward? Whether they make a new movie or they transition into this television series, what is your hope for the series going forward? Do you think there have to be some core traits that have to be in there to avoid kind of a slump? Or do you think it's got fertile ground to run?
Okay. One thing I think that it has to continue, and that's going to be tricky if they do it on a TV show, because money is a factor and time is a factor when you're making movies.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose the production quality and the action starts to feel cheap, and I'm sorry to point out some of maybe the Star Wars TV shows, but they didn't look that great. The sets didn't look that great. If we start to get into that territory, it's going to feel like they've kind of watered it down, and then it's lost its magical feeling that it has right now. So that would bum me out. However, because they've done so well up to this point, all I can do is kind of be excited for whatever they give me. And if they give me another movie, because like we said, is he really dead? Is this the end of the movies? We don't know. I'd be okay with this being the last movie. If they're gonna do another one, I'm gonna do the same thing I did for Toy Story 4. I didn't think that Toy Story 4 needed to happen, but then when I saw it, I loved it and I was totally cool with it. So same with the John Wick. You've already earned my trust. If you make a fifth one and it's great, I'll love it, and I won't say it should have ended.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think as long as a lot of the same people are associated with the TV series or the next movie that understand what makes it so special, you're right. If some of these elements are lost, we talked about how great the production design is, how great the choreography is, and how imaginative it is, how great the cinematography is, the acting. If we start to, I think, lose some of that or some of the attention to that, which hopefully wouldn't be inevitable in a series, but like you said, there are other series out there, maybe for all kinds of reasons, scheduling, budget, these things kind of start to fall away. Maybe that could hurt this. But if they're able to maintain all of that, then, it could be wonderful. Could be great.
It could be great. I'm just going to go with, I try to trust filmmakers that have already made me happy. Like if they've
Right.
kind of failed you, you can be like, well, we don't know how that's going to turn out. But even in terms of like Cobra Kai, like they've kind of just hit it out of the park the whole time. So most of that show, I've been like, I trust these guys. I'm not worried. So even though they're going to continue this, I think I'm not worried. Let's see what they got.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, thank you for joining me today at the movies, and then also for this amazing instant discussion, instant movie reaction for John Wick Chapter 4. Do you have any final thoughts on the movie?
I wish I could rank it within the series, but I feel like it's almost impossible. Like they're all great for their own reasons. So final thoughts. If this is the close, a great close.
Right. I know you're right. If everything has to come to an end, if this is the end, it's fine. This is a fair ending. I think it's a good ending. And if it's not, then hopefully the quality will continue. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Be sure to check us out next time on KenCast. If there are movies that you'd like to see discussions about, let us know in the comments, or you can email me at heykencast@gmail.com. Dave, thank you so much. And may you have many great movie experiences going forward.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And before we leave today, Max Kelly, if you're still on here, he has a question. What are your thoughts on Dutch coming back? If Chad McQueen doesn't want to come back, would you be okay with them using CGI of Chad while they get his son Stephen McQueen to portray Dutch on set? I don't know. Okay, so obviously, Dave, you're a big Karate Kid 3 and Cobra Kai fan. Of course, Chad McQueen plays Dutch. What do you think? They probably wouldn't CGI. I don't think they'd probably CGI anyone.
I hope not. No, that move has not proven to work yet. Maybe it has. There's probably one of them that works, but most of the time that's a risky play.
Right. And I just don't see Chad McQueen, because he's around and he doesn't want to be in it. I don't see him going like, no, I don't want to be in it, but you guys can like CGI my face onto someone else. I just don't see that.
Right. That's the old Back to the Future 2 Crispin Glover lawsuit, if you know what I'm talking about, where somebody else played Crispin Glover and he said, hey, he can't look like me.
Yes. And you're right. That turned into like an industry-wide major lawsuit. It determined policy going forward at that point. And although I would love, the best scenario I think would be if Chad McQueen decided to come back. If there was a good part for him and he decided to come back, I'd love to see Dutch. The guy's, he goes off, man. He's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anytime we're talking about special effects to use a character, I mean, we saw the Indiana Jones trailer recently, and I guess they had to make him young again too. So it's becoming a thing now too, where
right.
I don't want to, whether to make him young, old, whatever. Uncanny Valley.
Indeed, and maybe now with like deep fakes and AI, maybe that technology will just get better. I don't know. I'm personally kind of getting a little scared at how good maybe some of this video is going to be as far as being able to convince us it's someone, but it's not. But you're right. Up to this point, we've dealt with the Uncanny Valley. It looks like they might have improved it a bit for the Indiana Jones movie. I know that they're probably still working on the special effects on that movie, but you're right. This does seem to be a thing. At least in that movie, Harrison Ford, he's in it. He's fully on board, and he's consented to it. And I don't know. Do you feel like we should bring back deceased actors that way?
No, I don't actually. I think just either recast it or write the character out or something, or it feels like at that point, are you just making a cartoon? I guess, and I know that's not fair to special effects work, but
right. Yeah. I agree. That's what we did all throughout history, right? With Shakespeare and plays and actors, you would get new actors playing all these classic characters, and you would just change them out. And that was an actor's job. They had to inhabit these famous roles. And so, yeah, I really respected there's what Dr. Sleep is one of those that I like how they did that. You know, they obviously had very famous people who played those characters in The Shining, but they recast those characters in Dr. Sleep, but it worked. You know, it didn't have to have Jack Nicholson's digital face on there. You know, you just got a different actor. I guess it was Henry Thomas in this case, and it worked. It worked for the movie.
Yeah, actually, one thing I did the audiobook of is Heat 2. I love the movie Heat. And
Oh, wow. Yeah, how was that?
I loved Heat 2, and I heard that they're trying to make either a film or I don't know if it's going to be a mini series about it, but they're talking about Adam Driver playing the Robert De Niro character because a lot of Heat 2 takes place before Heat. And that's something where I thought about that and said, okay, you know, I love that movie, but I would be interested in seeing another actor play that role as a younger person. I would definitely never watch it if they were going to do some more de-aging stuff.
Right, indeed. Yeah, I'm a huge Michael Mann fan, and I would love to actually see that. I saw that he was doing that, and I was wondering if maybe he had tried to make the movie, and you know he just hit the normal roadblocks, and so he just decided to write it down. But then maybe this will create the interest to make a series or a movie.
That's what I'm hoping, but I was a little skeptical going into it. Like, does this need a sequel? But I found myself halfway through it, like really engaged and loving it. So I do hope they produce something of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dave, thank you so much. It was great talking to you today. And I hope this has been a great start to the weekend. I hope you have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Always good to hang out with Ken.
Always great to hang out with Dave Srock. Everyone, check out Mama Out of Bullets. That is Dave's YouTube channel. We've got a link down in the description. Subscribe. He's a filmmaker. He makes all these great films. You can watch them on his YouTube channel right now. He was also a cinematographer, director of photography, brilliant at for the movie Cobra Cole, which also featured yours truly. Check that out if you haven't checked it out yet. And we look forward to seeing you next time on KenCast. We'll see you. Bye.